Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, June the 15th, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan on How the Frack Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we are a family-friendly podcast, at least we try to be. Sometimes words do fly at the same time. There may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, how do we begin this? If you're like most of the U.S. right now, you're on God's hot plate. So hopefully wherever you are staying cool, you're staying hydrated, and making sure you are definitely getting plenty of water. That being said, I guess we have to talk about this because there's no way we can't talk about this. The Ukraine, out of everybody, is seen to be getting the lion's share of assistance, if you will. Biden has taken it upon himself to say, you know what, we are going to basically increase the amount of weapons going to Ukraine in their battle with Russia. Now, I have sat there and said this, guys, that usually in this case, it's not a bad idea when we're fighting a war, but we're kind of fighting a war on all sides right now. Not just the fact that we seem to be one of the very few companies helping Ukraine. NATO has done probably a quarter of what we've done. We've already assigned a nearly $1 billion economical package to Ukraine. On top of that, we are now sending more weapons just because Russia is gaining ground in some areas in Ukraine because Putin still believes that there are areas in Ukraine that he believes are, how can I put this? The land itself is entitled to Russia. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe we should defend others, but only from a position of strength. Because right now there are a lot of Americans who are literally and figuratively wondering what is going to be done for them while we are helping Ukraine with just military and foreign aid. So I really cannot knock for a lot of Americans are saying, you know, maybe instead of helping Ukraine first, we should help ourselves, which is a point. The $1 billion package that was sent to Ukraine was voted for and passed with some amazing accuracy. However, America's First Rescue Plan and other plans that were deemed to help Americans have been sidelined. At some point, some could be pointed at Manchin Cinema being the only two holds up in an all-Democratic vote in a slim majority. Some have pointed out that Republicans have refused to do anything that doesn't benefit their corporate lobbyists and basically the NRA that pays them. The thing is, it's going to be hard. And I think President Biden has the hardest job right now is, again, convince the American people, especially in the middle of a midterm election, which we are 3 months away and counting, that it's going to take a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. The Republicans have done nothing. But I've always sat there and said, and I've said this multiple times on this podcast, that with this midterm election year, Democrats are going to have a harder time convincing voters to continue to vote for them, considering the fact that the lack of promises that they made on the campaign were not made. Versus Republicans who just have to convince idiots. And yes, if you vote conservative, unless you're a rich person, unless you're rich, you're a corporation, that is the only reason I see that any reason why you vote Republican. Because honestly, there is no point to do that. But yet, for the life of me, some believe that's a great idea, and this is where Republicans thrive. Republicans thrive on this. That's why I was sitting there saying this midterm season, Biden, which again, Biden Democrats can still pull this off. They only have to do two things, or one or two. One of the two, if they did it, it would work great in their favor. Cancel student loan debt, make decriminalize marijuana, or do both and give yourself a landslide. Because number one, decriminalizing marijuana and making it legal in all 50 states is an economic boom. Do you understand the simple fact of the matter? Not only the number of businesses that'll be open, the number of jobs that'll be created, but the amount of money that'll be taxed from basically decriminalizing marijuana, because marijuana, in my opinion, is not a drug. That is an economic boom. We have seen it happen in multiple cities in multiple states. No problem. And canceling student debt would raise the credit profiles of nearly 20 plus million Americans, because student loan debt has prevented people from getting cars, from getting homes, for just actually paying more, just because that the income includes the student loan debt, which has been designed to be almost impossible to pay off. I say almost impossible because a lot of people were able to pay it off, but I guarantee they either had money saved up, had people they can get to, or simple fact of the matter is they actually were able to get the capital after many years. People shouldn't have to waste many years of paying back student loans when the loans were designed to never be repaid back in the first place. They were designed to generate revenue until you died. That's why you always just say there's three things that are guaranteed in life: debt, taxes, and student loans. No kidding. That's all I'm saying. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover the story as well, because I sat there and said, what'll happen? The ramifications of that failed President Trump? I told you guys the ramification would happen is that people will come out the woodwork. Proud Boys, the Boogaloo, all of them. And now one that was luckily caught before they caused any more damage in a Pride rally, this group called Patriot Front was actually caught before any damage was done.
They're getting arrested.
Tonight, authorities say all 31 members of a white supremacist group, on their knees and zip-tied before being charged with conspiracy to riot, are now out on bail 2 days after this startling video of their arrest.
These guys stopped a U-Haul full of dudes.
It happened in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, after a 911 call from someone who saw the men pile into the back of a U-Haul, dressed like a small army and headed towards a gay pride event.
I have no doubt in my mind that had that van stopped at the park or much near the park, that we still would have ended up in a riot situation.
Facing a misdemeanor charge, police say the suspects, members of a group called Patriot Front, had shields and shin guards, while also recovering a smoke grenade and a document outlining their operations plan. Authorities say the Pride in the Park event they plan to riot at is where families gathered with children.
It was quite a scary sight. It was very intimidating for a lot of us.
With no response yet from the group's leader, Patriot Front was formed after the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, part of a network of hate groups, say experts, who try to spread fear.
Did you guys call the cops?
Like this group in the Bay Area, said to be members of the Proud Boys, who police say could be charged with a hate crime after hurling homophobic insults Saturday during Pride Month at a library.
People are lashing out at a greater rate, and we're seeing a huge spike in far-right extremists seeking to disrupt peaceful events.
Tonight, hate converging with pride in what could have been a violent weekend. Miguel Allen.
Yeah, could have been way violent. Could have been way violent because, again, that kind of thing right there is exactly what I was talking about. That what Trump did on January 6th was the catalyst. Aside from the fact Unite the Right rally, where you had a bunch of white people who apparently found an abundance of tiki torches, khaki shorts, and white polos. This is the after effect. That, again, you would think for a pride rally, you would honestly think for a pride rally that a U-Haul full of guys all dressed up, same outfits and everything else, and you would think it would be considered normal. I mean, a whole bunch of white guys sitting in the back of a U-Haul trying to go to a gay pride rally. I'm just saying I don't judge, but they didn't come to celebrate. They didn't come to celebrate what they, you should be how you feel. I've always said that. Be how you feel. Don't be ashamed of what you are. But they didn't come to celebrate that. I guarantee 9 times out of 10, they came to hurt. They came to maim. They came to make a point. They came to oppress. They came to terrorize. Because what the thing about all this is, guys, this is homegrown terrorism. Homegrown. And the most dangerous, I've said this before many years, 2 years ago on this podcast, I sat there and said this. The most dangerous terrorist in America is a white man. Is a white man who thinks that they're oppressed, who thinks that they're being downgraded, who thinks they're being treated as second-class citizen. Why? Because they're no longer, because a lot, and not all white guys, but a good number of them believe that they are no longer the top of the food chain. And so they feel like things are being taken over, and then they think they're being oppressed, which they obviously are not. So hopefully with Patriot Front and other ones out there, they need to be charged with hate crimes. Just because they didn't have weapons, they still had shields. They still had shields, shin guards, riot gear, and a smoke grenade. And I don't need you don't need me to sit there and tell you that for some fact of the matter, that a lot of damage can be done without a firearm, especially at a pride event where you have families, including women and children, and you have guys sitting in a U-Haul van that was looking disrupted. Why? Because again, they believe that what they're doing is right. However, you will not see that on Fox News. I guarantee you that. Move right along, guys. Again, I keep talking about this simple fact of domestic issues that are happening, and that with Uvalde, we are now starting to see a trend of individuals who believe they can just do whatever they want and of course, not expecting consequences. But at the same time, this goes to show you that gun laws, gun legislation, and reform, all the above, need to happen to prevent situations just like Uvalde.
And police are being praised today after a gunman opened fire at a Texas summer camp. Workers rushed to protect the roughly 250 children while officers quickly responded and shot and killed the gunman. This comes as gun reform legislation is being discussed in Washington on what could be a historic deal. ABC's Kenneth Moten joins me live now from Washington with more on all this. Kenneth, this bipartisan agreement on gun safety measures is limited, but would be the most significant federal legislation on this issue in nearly 30 years. The framework, though, is going to be the issue, right? Those details as this thing is written out. So what are the next steps now that this sort of baseline agreement has been formed?
Yeah, Diane, the devil is going to be in the details here. That bipartisan group of senators, including those 10 key Republicans, they agreed on the framework, but now this week they are working to get that legislative text on paper with the goal of having this done by Friday so they can vote on this bill by next week. Then it's over to the House. The White House says President Biden wants this on his desk as soon as possible, even though it does not include what he wanted, exactly all the specifics that he wanted, including that ban.
So I stop it right there because it kind of goes to another story. But yes, the Texas summer camp where a gunman opened fire, where the gunman was being denied entry into the summer camp, was armed, fired a round into the area where children were. The staff were able to protect the kids while the gunman was killed by police. So again, this is a growing trend, especially not only that in Texas. We have one where in Atlanta at a home goods store, an armed man was making threats. And again, they're not joking about this anymore. They're taking a lot of this mess seriously.
The home goods on North Point Parkway in reference to a man with a gun that had been threatening people inside. When officers got on scene, they immediately began searching the building and evacuating the people that were inside. Currently, no shots have been fired. There's no reports of injuries. There were people taking cover to barricade themselves for safety. But as police were sweeping and searching the building, we were able to get everybody out safely. Police, specifically SWAT, has made contact with the suspect inside, and we do have him secured in a portion of the building. We do have our hostage negotiators on scene that are trying to create a dialogue with the suspect so that it can come to a peaceful resolution.
Think about that for a second. An armed person decides to make a threat inside of a home goods store, and again, we should not be surprised. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to this whole gun culture. And do not get me wrong, I'm a firearms owner. I own firearms. But I don't treat firearms the same way I would treat my tools in my garage. Guns should be treated with the utmost care, responsibility, and the highest regard. Why? Because they're dangerous. And people can say, "Well, guns are just tools. They're no different. They're no different than my chainsaw. They're no different than my nail gun. My nail gun could kill people." Yes, but you're not using a nail gun to basically impose your will. You're not a disturbed individual with mental issues that's able to get a hold of a gun. You're not a person who had a history of domestic violence and are still able to get a gun via the boyfriend loophole. All of these things I'm talking about is the reason why gun laws need to change and be upgraded. And I have been saying that because it needs to happen. And as you heard on the previous story, which we'll get into a little bit later, that there is somewhat of a plan being done about that. But even more so, as I was saying, there seems to be this uptick of just what we see in Uvalde and sending what we saw at Parkland, what we've seen at Sandy Hook, where people believe that they can just say anything and go ahead and do it because they can. For example, in Kansas City, Missouri, that they had to close their schools because of a mass shooting threat that was done on Snapchat. On Snapchat, an individual decided that he was going to threaten killing people and then, mass murdering. So that put every school in the Kansas City, Missouri area on lockdown. At the same time, they did find said person, and they're now in custody. But the point I'm making out of all this is that it is way too easy for those to obtain firearms. And if you're watching any of my previous podcasts, I've explained, even in my home state of Tennessee, it is too easy. I mean, it is literally easy. Now that's the thing that's the one thing we need to put right there. Why is it so easy to obtain firearms? Because right now there's only 7 states, and 7 states have raised the age of purchasing firearms to 21 years of age. 7 states. The other 43 have not done anything. In Tennessee, I sat there and said this, and I dared anyone that lives in the same state as me to tell me I'm wrong on this. Because universal background checks need to be done everywhere, not just gun stores, not just places like Bass Pro and Cabela's and Academy. I've also said that private sales need to have that. Private sales need to be done within an FFL licensed area or at a police department because background checks need to be run. I have also sat there and said that universal background checks should be done everywhere. They're not being done at gun. They're not, I mean, that's the one I'll tell people. Commercial sales like gun trade and knife events, background checks are not being done. Especially here in Tennessee. I sat there and said it. If you got cash and ID and you go to any gun trade knife show here in Tennessee, you can purchase a firearm. Easy. No background checks are being done. But that's the thing. It's amazing the Republican opposition to that, which again we'll get into a little bit later because I want to go over the entire plan of what they're trying to push forward through the Senate right now. But in the wake of schools, I mean, there's two stories we have on schools where one I get because it does help, but more can be done, and the other is just batshit crazy. In Philadelphia, with the most recent school shootings that they have decided to institute a camera system, which again is a start, but not really the end all solution.
If you want to do something, somebody might be watching you.
In front of a high school where a teenager was murdered leaving class earlier this year, City Council, police, and the mayor announced a new safety plan involving police surveillance.
We think our ability to be in a position to see what's going on anytime throughout the course of the day not only will help us prevent crime, but it will create an environment where people feel a little more safe.
The city plans on spending $1.8 million to install 100 new security cameras near these 15 schools, covering the city from Roxborough to the northeast to South Philadelphia.
Those schools were chosen based on information regarding shootings that have taken place in the area around those schools.
Our data journalism team says there have been 4,253 serious incidents in the Philadelphia school district this year. Some of them were shootings. In January, a high school senior was shot and killed outside of Bartram High School. In May, a teen was shot at 51st and Columbia after leaving school early. The next week, 3 teens were shot leaving class at Simon Gratz Mastery Charter School. These new cameras will plug into the Delaware Valley Intelligence Center, where Philadelphia police have real-time camera feeds to monitor crime.
We hate to think that we have to have this environment where you have to have this coverage, but there's a simple reality is that people in the neighborhoods in the city of Philadelphia, they want us to do something.
These new cameras will be different than the ones you see already on the buildings. Instead, they will be in the neighborhoods around the school, along the streets that kids frequently walk to get to and from class.
We need to find a way to reverse that trend and realize that one youth being murdered by gun violence is one too many.
The city says it will need to hire new analysts to monitor the cameras.
And again, I'm not mad about that because it does help out in a sense where you do have surveillance, which again, it makes sense to have that surveillance there. But at the same time, it's not an end-all solution. I have been saying that it's more than twofold. It's more than just making sure schools are safer because we've seen a lot of crazy ideas. One that's being taunted around right now is arming teachers. And I thought to myself, the fact that you want to arm teachers, let me get this straight. So just about a month ago, a little month ago, or 2 months going on, if you want to be honest, that they were all like, well, you can't read these books should not be available to my child because they're going to make them feel bad about it. You wanted them to remove people of color, LGBTQ authors because you wanted your child not to feel that their caucasity is a shameful thing. A bunch of parents were telling teachers this. They were telling teachers, we don't want you teaching this because we know better, even though we don't have a background education. We've never put together an educational plan or course or development or taught kids or just really have any expertise in the background whatsoever. But because we're parents, we know more than these educators who actually have the credentials and the education to back up what they're doing. A lot of parents just 2 months ago were exactly like that. Those very same parents are now saying you want to arm the teachers. And unfortunately, you have idiots in Ohio who literally and figuratively are now making it easier. Ohio governor, as of today, signed a bill making it easier for teachers to have guns in schools. You know, that was crazy. Wait till listen to the next part. The law that requires the amount of training for teachers to carry firearms in schools have been reduced from 700 hours to less than 24 hours. Yes, you read that right. The new law reduced the amount of training for teachers in Ohio to carry firearms in schools from 700 hours to less than 24 hours. Because a lot of people, homosexuals and gun people, and I say homosexuals because, again, homosexuals are the ones that are just so obsessed with guns that I think that they may be playing just a little bit too much and maybe put on a watch list. Talking about them. But some people think that it's a good idea. I say it's a terrible idea. Teachers are not the Avengers. Don't get me wrong. Teachers are heroes. I mean, teachers are heroes for the extraordinary profession that they chose to take on to educate the generations that follow and to inspire creativity and just actually shaping kids to be overall great adults. I will always have a special place in my heart for teachers, but they're not the police. They should not have to worry about basically arming themselves. Because again, we don't want another Uvalde. We don't want another Parkland. We don't want another Sandy Hook. We don't want another Columbine. We don't want another mass shooting in a school. But arming teachers is not the option. Because again, training for a firearm takes a ridiculous. I mean, anybody will tell you to make sure that you're doing everything right with firearms. It requires rigorous, continuous training. It is not a one and done. You just don't take a class and be done with it. You have to continuously train. And for the most part, 700 hours of training used to be something that was admirable. But it's amazing now that they're trying to McDonald's fast food this thing so that teachers, if they were willing, because almost every teacher in Ohio is either declined or even retired or quit their profession because of this new law being signed. Because the simple fact of the matter is, less than 24 hours of training does not make you professional with firearms. It does not. It makes you dangerous. And there's nothing more dangerous to turn around and sit there and say, okay, teachers, we need you to start carrying now to protect our students. I've said it once and I'll say it again. It's not the answer. It's not. Could we? I mean, what about school resource officers? Too many of them will make minority kids feel like they're in prison. Even one. Like I said before, it's the whole thing. And I said, that's why we're talking about school resource officers, usually law enforcement officers. And law enforcement and minority and people of color do not have the strongest of relationships. As a kid myself, when I saw 4 or 5 cops in a school, I'm like, okay, somebody's either getting arrested or something's going down. But the one thing I will say above all else, I never felt safe. I felt more paranoid of what they were going to do. Because keep in mind, Columbine hired more student resource officers post their shooting. And you know what they did? They didn't stop any school shootings, but there was an arrest and increase of minors, specifically, not minors, of majority kids for behavioral and other charges. So there was an uptick in the arrest of minority children, but school shootings have stopped. Doesn't justify the need for more SROs. Doesn't justify the need for teachers to be armed. There are many different other ways we can go across this, but gun legislation is one of them. How we look at schools is another one. How we, the educational budget, which keeps getting cut every year, especially in some states, and on top of that, teachers need to be increased. We also need to look at our neighborhoods, because again, if you have a neighborhood that's low in financial opportunities, low in job opportunities, low in just overall services to help and benefit the welfare of those that live there, when all of those particular additions are zero or nowhere to be found, crime goes up pretty freaking easily. At the same time, if you have so many of those neighborhoods, yes, something like a shooting is bound to happen, because again, we're not addressing the reason for the crime. You're just trying to address the crime with basically more bodies and more guns, and that will not work. We saw that at Uvalde. Good guys with guns were standing outside while a gunman was inside murdering innocent children and teachers. Just saying. Moving right along, guys. Unfortunately, we did get some news today about the federal interest rate, and unfortunately, it's not good.
Listen, it's big. We thought originally it was going to be 50 basis points, but Jay Powell is in a situation, right? We are in a serious inflationary environment. Normally, the Fed likes inflation to be around 2%, and it's currently approaching 9%. So 75 basis points is a big move, but it's still tricky, because what they don't want to do is move so much so quickly that they push us into recession. But if they don't do something aggressive like they are right now, prices will likely continue to rise, and the economy is suffering for it, especially right around gas prices. So this is a big move. It's not unexpected. It's the thing that people have been waiting for. Most economists across the board have said this should have happened months ago. So markets are going to take this as a positive.
Okay. So what she's saying, guys, is that basically what happened is that the interest rate has been raised by 0.75%. Now, you're probably wondering for those who are wondering, well, the Federal Reserve raised the interest rate. Now, again, this does affect everybody. Let me point this out. The interest rate that the Federal Reserve does is to basically combat inflation. Inflation is high. Actually, it's been as high in the last 3 decades. Inflation at this rate has been its highest in 3 decades. The thing about inflation is just that in order to basically combat it, the Federal Reserve does raise the interest rates to slow inflation down. The problem is that because now it's at 0.75, which again is the highest it's ever done since 1994, the thing about this is it does affect a lot of things. It will affect loans, auto loans, mortgages, the way we borrow money, credit card APRs will go up just because they are trying to combat inflation. Does that make things harder? Yeah. You will be paying more. You will be paying more to borrow money. You will be paying more on mortgages. You will be paying more on car loans if you decide to go for a new car. And you will be paying more, obviously. I mean, I would say you'd be paying more at the pump, but you're already there. At the same time, you'll be paying more in groceries. Unfortunately, these are ramifications of it to avoid recession. Does that mean we're still on the path of recession? Right now, it's hard to say. But the fact that it's been raised by 0.75% does scream that we need to be concerned. But that goes back to, again, and I've said there and said it's amazing that I wish Biden would have done one of two things. Number one, repeal the tariffs. This is the one thing I wanted to point out. Trump's tariffs have not been repealed. His tax plan, where he gave breaks to the top 10%, to the top 1%, to the rich people, those tax breaks are still in place. It is amazing that I was wondering what Biden was going to do with his first term of his presidency, and I did not think that his first order of business would be to reverse everything that Trump has done. because trust and believe, Trump did actually inherit a somewhat stable economy, a somewhat stable rate where it wasn't inflation. We were just coming out of a recession because of Bush 2.0. But again, this goes back to what I was saying, and I will argue this all the time. And argue with me if you want to. I want to see this in the comments. But if you look historically, every Republican administration, the economy has tanked. Every Democratic administration, the economy has bounced back and has thrived. History has yet to prove me wrong on this. But with Trump's tariffs and his tax plan still in place, the fact that we do not have a windfall profits tax in place where these oil companies right now are making buku bucks off gas, the fact that we are still giving out foreign aid where we should be, we should have passed law. We should have passed some things like the American Rescue Plan, like, again, canceling student loan debt. And again, these are three economic boons that you could have had. American Rescue Plan, canceling the student loan debt, and of course, decriminalizing marijuana. Decriminalizing marijuana would have, all three of those are economic booms. And yet, Biden does not act on them. But again, rightfully so, he should blame Republicans for inflation. But at the same time, Joe, you still need to get off that centrist mentality and actually be more progressive. That's all I'm saying. But speaking of progressive, guys, I did want to get back to gun safety for a little bit because I want to talk about the plan that currently is coming from the House and is now going to the Senate to be discussed and debated on before it gets to President Biden's desk. Some of it I do like, while some of it still needs a little bit of work. Just saying.
Touted as the most significant deal on new gun legislation in decades, could be on the president's desk in weeks, says the GOP's lead negotiator.
I think there's a desire to get this thing done sooner rather than later.
The framework, agreed to by at least 10 Republicans needed to pass the bill, includes incentives for states to enact so-called red flag laws that allow courts to temporarily take guns away from people deemed dangerous. The plan also includes more money for mental health and school security and sets up a mandatory review of juvenile and mental health records for gun buyers under 21. That step may have stopped the 18-year-old Uvalde shooter from buying his weapons. Today, residents there reacting to the proposed deal.
I think the bipartisan deal that they may pass is a small first step. I think they have a long way to go.
Other communities rocked by gun violence are also watching closely, from Newtown to Parkland.
I don't think this package goes nearly far enough.
While the bill's exact language is still being crafted, the agreement would also close the so-called boyfriend loophole, preventing dating partners, not just spouses in domestic violence cases, from having guns.
I think that it's a start in the right direction.
Do you think the system failed your daughter?
Oh, definitely.
Pamela Riley's daughter, Rosemarie, was a nursing student in Michigan when her ex-boyfriend shot and killed her and then himself in 2016.
To me, the only justice for her is that she wouldn't have died in vain by helping other families.
The NRA has opposed closing the boyfriend loophole before, but the group has not taken a position yet on the framework for the gun deal, saying it will review.
Okay, so there are some good points from this. But I have to agree, it honestly does not go far enough. What I mean by that is, yes, enacting red laws. For those that don't know, red laws are basically allowing the court in any city or state that if they do deem that a person is deemed dangerous to the public, then yes, they can take their firearms away from them. Again, red flag laws are what we need, but the fact that they sit there and said incentive bothers me. Incentive. What incentive does the state need to have to ensure that dangerous people don't have hold of firearms? That's the thing that I was like, when I first heard that, I'm like, you have to give states incentive, which tells me that's a bone being thrown to Republicans. Because again, Republicans are against, and I've said this before, they're against red state laws, red laws. They're against that. They're against universal background checks. They are against, and trust me when I say this, they are against raising the age of where you can purchase firearm. Like Texas being one of them. Texas, you can be 18 years old and you can buy a long gun, but you cannot buy alcohol. At 18, you can buy a gun, but you can't buy alcohol until you're 21. So be this straight. I can get a long gun when I turn 18, but I can't go for insurance or rent a car until I'm over the age of 21. Make it make sense. At the same time, yes, I do agree that, but again, these are compromises, like a juvenile review, which means that if you are 18 years old and you're purchasing a gun, that a mandatory review of your record is being done before you purchase a firearm. This can be circumvented by just pushing the age to 21. This could just literally be fixed. That's why I stood and said the thing about that plan is, outside of the boyfriend loophole, which again I do support, it's not enough. It's not enough. I have been saying this because every other nation out there that has not dealt with what we dealt with, I have been saying this. That the simple fact of the matter is that the best way that this gets handled is, number one, we do have to include the mental health side, which again, they did put money toward mental health social studies. But again, that's counterproductive. Keep in mind, Republicans put in the Dickey Amendment, which again, for fall, I actually did cover this about 2 podcasts ago with the Dickey Amendment, where Republicans had this snuck in to where no government allocated money can be put to use for CDC to study the effects of mental health and gun violence in the United States. That Dickey Amendment was put there during the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. It's still there. And yet they're trying to stand and say, well, we want to devote money for it. But that's the beauty part of what Republicans have done. What the Republicans have done is sit there and said, oh, well, we're okay with this, but we're not going to take our amendment away. We're just going to make it hard for you guys in the budget to figure out what money can be allocated for this study. That's exactly what they did. And they literally sat there and put it there where it says, oh, well, we did something by doing nothing. I have been saying this aside from the fact that Dickey Amendment needs to be burned to the ground. I have been saying that mental health, we could be like Japan. We could be like Japan, where you have to recertify every year. You have to be mentally evaluated. That you have to pass a firearms class. You have to pass a firearms test. That you can't own shotguns. You can own pistols. You have to qualify in shooting, and at the same time have a gunpowder license and another license to carry. And that has to be done with a certain time frame every year. Japan literally by far has the strongest measures for gun control. And we can learn a little bit of that by doing that in the US. Number one, raise the age to 21 across all 50 states. Raise the age to 21, no exceptions. Number two, introduce red flag laws. We can have red flag laws in every 50 states. Number three, universal background checks of all sales, including private sales. And to add addition to 4A, we'll call it 4A. 4A, all private sales have to be done in authorized FFL locations or police departments. Because again, universal goes back to number three, universal background checks. So 4, again, private sales can no longer be done in private. They must be done at an FFL license, federal firearms license place, or a police department to make sure that this is being done right and witnessed, and handoffs in that paperwork. Basically, all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed was the words I was looking for. At the same time, we can keep going. Number 5, high capacities are banned. I mean, anything more than 15, what are you trying to take out? Oh, well, my AR-15 needs 45, 50. For what? I mean, 15 is the most I can see you carrying a clip for. Beyond that, what do you need more than 15 rounds for? High capacity magazines should be gone. Bump stocks should be removed. Ghost guns, which again, if we update the definition of a firearm, will eliminate ghost guns, because ghost guns can still be purchased by anybody. Ghost guns are not fully automated guns, they're kits. Those kits can still be purchased by anybody because they don't have any serial numbers. In less than 30 minutes, you have a fully working firearm. There are so many things that we can do, and I just named off 5 things already off the bat that would make it harder for those. Because here's the one thing I'll say about gun legislation before we move on to the next one. The homosexuals and those out there believe that, well, these laws aren't going to stop criminals, because that's their go-to, aside from Chicago. Criminals don't follow gun laws, and the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good white gun. So it's 3 things. They say this all the time. And number 1, The last couple of shootings, the last mass shootings, were not done by criminals. They were done by individuals who had access to firearms they should never had. Number two, the fact you keep bringing up Chicago means nothing because Japan, New Zealand, UK, and Australia have some of the strictest gun laws. Every one of those gun laws were put in place after a mass shooting. I just named out 4 nations that haven't had a mass shooting since those laws were enacted. Canada, just not too long ago, decided to put a freeze on all firearm sales. Does that suck for Canadians? Yes. But it just goes to show you what happens, that yes, you can enact legislation immediately and not have to argue because some of those have been purchased by the NRA, those have been bought by the NRA to do their bidding, and still will not give an answer on why an 18-year-old needs to buy a firearm. Still doesn't. But they'll talk about Chicago all the time. Oh, well, everybody gets killed there, and they got some of the strictest, they got some of the strictest gun laws around. So I just show you gun laws don't work. Republicans hang around gun laws like they will hold on Chicago like holding on Benghazi. And thank God, Benghazi hasn't been said since they realized Hillary wasn't going to win the presidency. Just goes to show you. But again, gun laws themselves can honestly be changed. It can be done, and we've seen from other nations, it does have a positive impact. That's all I'm saying. But moving right along, guys, we do have some more information from the Buffalo shooter as he is now being officially charged with a hate crime, as he should be.
Breaking right now, federal hate crimes charges have been filed in the mass shooting at a Buffalo, New York supermarket last month. NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams joins us now. Pete, we are set to hear from Attorney General Merrick Garland very soon. Walk us through this new criminal complaint and how it could affect the length of time the alleged shooter faces in prison.
Well, the main thing that it could affect is the maximum penalty, because New York is not a death penalty state. Mm-hmm. But the federal system is a death penalty system, and according to the charges that are filed, he could face a maximum of the death sentence because there are 26 counts of hate crimes, firearm offenses, and those carry the maximum of those carry the death penalty. 10 counts of hate crimes resulting in death, 3 counts of hate crime involving bodily injury and attempt to kill. And the Attorney General disclosed this while he's in Buffalo for a memorial today. He's meeting with families of the people who were killed in the supermarket shooting. He carried a bouquet of white roses in and met with families, met with federal prosecutors up there. So the state has already filed its charges. And the federal government often does this in the civil rights oriented crimes, where the federal government does it for 2 reasons. One is it's a backstop in case something happens in the state system. But secondly, here you have a case where the maximum sentence is different than the maximum sentence under state law. Mm-hmm. So even though the crime is in New York, it still would be governed by the federal system if indeed he's ever charged in federal court, but that's the maximum he could face.
A backstop, that's a good way of explaining it. Justice.
Technically he could constantly get the death penalty, but again, the fact that you are charging with a hate crime means that does revolve another series of items coming up. So I guess we can't really complain too much. But again, how can we not complain about a shooter that decided to go into a shooter with body armor and an assault rifle decided to go into a supermarket and shoot nothing but black people, but apologize to the white person that he's scared. Yeah, hope he gets the book thrown at him. Also, some other news, guys, before we get close to our feel-good segment. If you guys remember the story of Patrick Loyola, he was the man who was basically shot in the back of the head by the police officer who said he feared for his life. Of course, the officer's name, Christopher Scher, was released, who is facing criminal charges as he's been arraigned. Grand Rapids Police has already went ahead and fired him, which will actually be effective tomorrow. I have been saying this, guys, that this is nothing new. This is honestly nothing new when you get this level of police shootings of minorities. And at this point, they do have to explain, above all else, he would have to explain why he feared for his life when, of course, by the examiner, the bullet was to the back of the head while the man was facing down in the stomach. Again, he's going to have to explain it, but I will hold my breath because usually when it comes to these police stories, guys, we usually run into the fact that they are trying to protect the officer and not defend the victim. But we'll follow that story as it comes along. The last story we got, guys, before we get to our feel-good segment, again, is a tale of 2 cities. Again, as I said before, guys, I live in Tennessee. It is progressively backwards. Even more so that just recently, Tennessee made homelessness again. If Tennessee, and I say this because if you camp, if you're homeless and you camp in a public park or anywhere on city property, it is a felony. I wish I could make this up. It literally and figuratively, especially here in Nashville. Nashville has made it a point to where they have sat there and said, and I wish I could make this up. Nashville has sat there and said, if you are homeless and you camp in a public area, it is a felony. Think about that for a second. We even have, think about that for a second. You're homeless, you need assistance, and the one thing they do is say, okay, well, if we can't, again, to combat the homelessness and the panhandling, that if we catch you, it's a felony. So let me get this straight. It's now a crime to be homeless. And that's how it amazes me how Nashville is on that. But Denver does something completely and utterly different. That Denver has signed 2 law bills creating campuses to where folks can get help if they're homeless by supplying housing, mental health services, job training. This is actually the site of where they're going to be building this care facility that will help people experiencing homelessness. Think about that for a second. That you have one city, Nashville, supposedly an it city. Trust me, being born and raised here, I know they say it's an it city, but really it's a. But the fact that our legislation, which is mostly conservative, have decided to say there and say, okay, well, homelessness is a felony, but while prices and everything else go up, there's going to be a lot of people looking for homes, or at least trying to staff the street themselves. Whereas in Denver, where they're actually trying to help the homeless population by doing what should have been done anyway. Basically giving them the facilities, giving them care, and most of all, shelter to transition out of homelessness and be productive citizens. This is why I sit there and say that Tennessee is progressively backwards and that we can take a lesson from these other cities and states that are actually trying to help out the homeless by not trying to put them in jail because the CEO of the Corporations of America, Corrective Corporations of America, has their home locations in, guess what? Tennessee. It's all relative. But moving right along, guys, we're going to go ahead and do our feel-good segment because usually on How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's hump day. It's, depending on your Wednesday, it might feel good. It might feel great. But tomorrow is Thursday, which is Friday Eve, and we always want to leave you guys out some good vibrations. Hopefully this will do that because who doesn't love roller skating? Who doesn't love the idea of, dancing to tunes or just getting down, or if you really see those guys who are really coordinated, really be dancing on skates. I never learned to skate backwards. I only learn how to speed skate because I was trying to get around the ring as fast as humanly possible, but that's just me. But anyway, this brotherly duo hopes to bring joy and laughter and peace because right now we definitely need it, and they definitely do it through skating. Check it out.
As soon as you step on the floor, like you ascend into another dimension. Like you're not thinking about anything. No hard times in life. You're not thinking about none of that. It's just you and your skates. And it's like you're just floating on a cloud in your own world. That's exactly what it feels like.
I get a lot of messages about how we inspire people to get back on the floor.
Yeah, that too. Yep.
I get a lot of messages, and I talk to people every single day.
So our mom was actually the original skater. She used to go when she was younger. Her mom used to drop her off at the rink, and she would skate all night. So she did the exact same thing with us. We just literally just want to bring joy and happiness to everybody who lays eyes on us.
I thought that was pretty cool. I never could skate. I could skate, but I could never skate that well. But I just not thought about it. I said, man, I am so jealous of them, how they got down. But again, that's just me. But with that being said, guys, that's going to do it for this podcast. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know it's up and live. I certainly appreciate it. Definitely leave your comments at the bottom because I want to know what you guys thought about everything that we discussed today. And definitely go from there. So shameless plugging before I do get out of here, guys. Shout out to Aria Geek Present Geek Salad. Definitely check them out. Geek Salad on YouTube as well as Facebook. Also, shout out to my buddy Vaughn, Big BZA Dollar on Facebook, Avon Westwood on all socials. Definitely check him out there as well. Of course, yours truly at BlackFox447 on Instagram. Definitely follow me there, as I usually post reviews of video games, movie, television shows, things of that nature, and gym stuff too, because I do a couple push-ups. I'm also about motivating and being positive and just trying to really help people, because look, we've all had a rough couple of years. At the same time, so we just need to learn to be kinder, to be nicer, to help each other, support each other, because that's really what it's all about at the end. Because would I love to succeed? Would I love to basically be successful? Yes. Do I love it to see other Black people be successful? Yes. I'm going to say specifically Black people. I love seeing Black people succeed, but I do also want to see other people succeed. I have, whether I see folks who start podcasts the next day and they blow up like Kevin Samuels, was good for them. I'm happy for them. But for me, I just want to see people succeed. I just want to see people win, because not only does that make me feel great, it motivates me to be better and just to get to that same level where they're all as well. But that's just me. As you saw the ticker at the bottom, guys, let me go ahead and make that just a little bit bigger for you. If you copy and paste that into your link browser, it'll take you to my link tree that has the YouTube, Facebook groups for all of my podcasts, How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit, and of course, the Offense Podcast. Definitely check them all out. Like, share, and subscribe. I would certainly appreciate it. Like I said, let me know. I'm just growing these podcasts out to be bigger, to be better. And the end goal would love to be that this is my only job. I would be completely happy about that. But that being said, guys, keep in mind, guys, coronavirus is still real. So please, oh please, still wear a mask in every traffic areas. Please be wary. If you take care of yourself, you take care of others. And that's how I make sure we get through this. So the last thing I'll say about How the Frack Got Here is all about, we're all about just trying to give you all the information that you need to make an informed decision. We're not trying to basically change your mind, persuade, or break the wheel. We're simply trying to do that, but provide a logical perspective to go along with it. We do a lot better as society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to change our way of life by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like elect our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, to elect our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, to elect our first woman as a higher-ranking lieutenant commander in the United States Navy. When we don't learn from our mistakes, we are doomed. We only don't learn from our mistakes. We are doomed to repeat them. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up on your paycheck? Why do we keep electing different politicians but still the same old game? And most importantly, how the frack we got here. Thank you all for watching. And again, if you watch this playback, please comment if it's live. I still want to know what you guys thought about everything we discussed about tonight. Aside from that, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace.